Well, this channel just hit 700 subs and is halfway to 800. Honestly, I was not expecting it to do so damn well, especially after my Whispering in Camp Forest review bombed. Now I know what franchise I need to milk in order to get to 1000, especially with the fact that it's now my most second viewed video. Just too bad it's not my first because... God, I hate the fact that my Slaughter Me Street 2 review is my most popular video. That shit sucks so much ass. But hey, at least some people enjoyed it. Same for my FNAF Creepypasta review, as I got a request to take a look at a creepypasta called 4 Nights at Freddy's. And I would have done it, well, as long as the story is interesting. However, I couldn't find it. I found tons of videos on it, but not the original written story. So instead, I will be reviewing a different pasta called FIN4F. Yeah, I know, it's a badass name. FIN4F is based off of, you guessed it, FNAF 4, and was written by Unhinged Fanatic on the Lost Episode Wiki. Don't harass them, only show love. I'm gonna keep this intro short simply because, well, this is a pretty long story. So let's see if it's any good. Will it be terrifying, or would it be as bland and forgettable as the game it's based off? Or will it fall into the bizarre with underground kid-scaring facilities with roller skating mannequins? There's only one way to find out. So, let's read. I'm gonna get this out of the way since I've been hearing a bunch of talks about a FNAF game. One of them turning 10 years old shortly. And that game is no other than 5 Nights at Freddy's 4. It's not really a horror game, especially one related to FNAF, that I consider my all-time favorite. In fact, I can't recall how long it's been since I've last played this. The one thing I fondly remembered is that me and my friend attempted night 1. We didn't last longer than 5 AM before getting jump scared by Bonnie. I can't lie, it got us pretty badly. But oh man, it struck me the hardest. I figured since the topic was popular amongst most of the FNAF fanbase, and I was pretty much a grown man that can handle a game like FNAF, I decided I'll give it a try for myself. The problem is, I'm currently broke as I'm typing this. I don't have the $7.99 to buy the game, and I haven't been able to go back to work and make any more money due to me falling ill recently. I'd rather not go into details since it's really not important. That, and you don't need to know. All you need to know is that I've been stuck in my room for a while, taking medicine every now and then. And thankfully, I've been better to where I can actually function again. Anyway, I thought the best way to bypass purchasing the legitimate game was to find an up-to-date copy of FNAF 4. Yes, I know it's piracy, but what are you gonna do? It wasn't long before I came across a Google Drive link that I can download. It had the game and everything. Seemed super promising, am I right? When the file was finished downloading, I opened the folder. Lo and behold, there was the copy of FNAF 4. However, it was weirdly titled differently. The name of the application was FIN4F. I can't pronounce it to save my life. Well, I guess this is what I get for pirating an $8 game. It also included a TXT file titled README. I opened the text file and it read, "Thank you for downloading version 2.1, the latest update to FNAF 4. We made it more scarier than ever before, and for your gaming experience, this will make your game just a bit more harder, but more scary in return. How many nights do you dare to spend?" I didn't really care about it, honestly. I mean, it's cute and all, other than the grammar being absolute shit, but I downloaded it for the game, and I don't want to waste any more time reading some poorly made thank you note. Upon running the application, I was met with a typical dark screen. I just sat there for a couple of seconds, maybe nearly a minute or so just on the same black screen. I continued waiting for the game to load, but nothing had popped up. Not even a line of text that would warn you about the game containing jump scares and flashing lights. Is this game even working? I thought to myself as I was starting to become impatient. As I was just about to close the game and try again, finally, the menu faded into view. About time. As I was just staring at the menu, out of the blue, I felt something weird about it. Like, I sensed something was different about the menu than what I last remembered. Although I couldn't exactly confirm what was off about it. other than Scott Cough not being credited. I knew for a fact that it was right in front of my face. Was the house in the middle always surrounded by empty land? I could have sworn there had been at least a few trees around it or whatnot. Not wasting any more time, I clicked on the new game and then began to wait for the first night to start. Thankfully, it didn't even take more than a second to load up the game, so it was a plus so far. Upon the game starting, I immediately became confused. I was expecting a section of a newspaper to pop up before beginning like the older FNAF games, but instead, I saw pixelated text come up on the screen. 5 days left until your birthday. I questioned what it meant by that, and whose birthday it was. But before I can come up with an answer, I was then showed a small yellow bear in the middle of my screen. It wore a purple top hat, bow tie, and it had black buttons on it, resembling a plushie. It was very minimal in detail, mostly because it was pixelated like the text. Something you would see on the Atari. Well, no shit. It's meant to replicate the style of Atari. Then I started to remember this was some sort of minigame that came before the actual night. The thing spoke, evidently, by the colored text being the same as the bear plush.
What did he do this time? He locked you in your room again. Don't be scared. I'm here with you.
After the dialogue, it then showed a bedroom, more specifically, a child's bedroom. In the middle of the room was a brown-haired kid, wearing a black shirt with 2 gray stripes and a pair of blue shorts. I noticed the kid was crying, but why? I'm assuming it's because he was locked in his room? If so, what did the kid do for this to happen? It most likely wasn't for a good reason, as I heard a low creepy laugh in the background. I later found out that the laughing was coming from his older brother. Regardless, I couldn't help but feel bad for him. And I haven't even done anything yet. To the right of my screen, there was the same bear plush that I saw just a few seconds ago. But this time, it had white dotted pupils, staring right at the kid from the bed. In the bottom left corner, there were some more plushies. Those I recognized as Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Using the arrow keys, I moved him towards his plushies in the corner out of curiosity. His tears fell from his eyes as he did. He stopped moving and said, "These are my friends," was all he said. I noticed at the top of my screen that there was his door. I assumed it was his door at least. I knew that the yellow bear plush mentioned that I was locked in my room, but I wanted to see if I could find a way out. I ran up to the door, and the sound of banging on the door repeated for a couple of seconds. Nothing. I just kept banging repeatedly until the kid laid on the ground with his eyes closed, still crying.
Tomorrow is another day,
the yellow bear plush said. The screen then transitioned to a black and white image. It was a kid's bed, most likely the same one from the minigame, and on the end of the bed sat a Freddy plush by the pillows. The top left text reads, Night 1. Admittedly, I wasn't so sure if I wanted to even play this or not. To be honest, it didn't really matter what I did next to pass the time. I'm gonna be stuck in my room for the entire day regardless, and I don't have anything better to do than to sit on my phone. You know what? I might as well try to get as far as I can. It then transitions again to show the whole bedroom. No longer in black and white. Immediately, I noticed the 2 doors perfectly parallel to each other, which was different from the child's bedroom in the minigame. It had 2 different drawers on both sides of the room. A big closet in the middle, picture frames on the walls, mostly on the left wall, some toys on the floor, a lamp on the right drawers, and a purple fan on the other. The thing about the game that left me unsettled the most was the lack of ambient music. It was one of the few things I remembered about this game that scared me, other than the jump scares, and I could only hear the crickets chirping and occasional background audios every now and then, like the dog barking or distant cars passing by. It didn't feel right that it's not present here. Was this part of the update? I also had the digital clock text that read 12 AM, and since this was a FNAF game, all you had to do is reach 6 AM without getting jump scared, and then you move on to the next night. Rinse and repeat until you reach the 5th one. I moved my light across the room, oblivious to the controls of the game. It didn't have any instructions explaining how to go to the doors or the closet. I was just left on my own with little idea of what I'm doing. I had clicked on the door by accident, and suddenly, I was running towards it. Cool, you have to click on the doors in order to go to them. Hadn't I known that, I would have done nothing the whole game. When I arrived at the door, I finally got some instructions on what to do, but they didn't help me whatsoever. The instructions read as follows. Listen carefully. If you hear, hold the door shut. If you do not hear, use your light. Yeah, I'll surely beat this game at this rate, I said sarcastically. Pressing random keys, I eventually figure out that holding control turns on your flashlight, and shortly after, holding shift closes the door. I continued pressing random keys to see if anything else happened, and it took away the guide I had. I didn't see what key I pressed as again, just pressing random keys. Now I'm not really going to go too deep in the gameplay, as for the most part, nothing really happens other than moving between my bed, the left and right doors, and my closet. But by the time I reached 5 AM, I ended up getting jump scared by Chica. You can just pretty much imagine me dying several times by either Bonnie or Chica. Yeah, thanks game. On the plus side, during one of my attempts, I figured out how to look towards my bed, also by accident. I also figured that there are little Freddys that I have to scare off as well. Another thing to worry about. Yippee. Eventually, I figured out that there's audible breathing by the door that wasn't there the first few hours, meaning that they're at your door and you have to close it to make the animatronics piss off. From there, it was now easy for me to complete my first night, and not long after, I reached 6 AM. Now we're getting somewhere. The pixelated text came up on my screen again. 4 days left until your birthday, and soon faded away. Starting the next minigame, note, for the rest of this, I'm not going to talk about the other minigames since they're pretty much the same, and are irrelevant to the weird changes present in this modded FNAF 4. I hadn't known that there's another minigame, not like the cutscene ones. This was called Fun with, where you had to use light to stop on the X, to skip 2 hours on the next night. But honestly, it's pointless to even try and play, let alone talk about it since all I see is an empty chair the whole time. Nothing else comes out of the dark to scare me. Just nothing. It's called Fun with Plushtrap, and he was meant to appear in the game, but for some reason, he just doesn't show up at all. Night 2 was just the same as the first night, just a little more difficult. All you need to know is that the amount of jump scares I got were now at a minimum, and I didn't face a shit ton of issues. However, there was now something different about my room. The picture frames were on the left side of the wall. They're now gone. Vanished out of thin air. It's like they never existed. It was at this moment that I was for sure certain that this was no way at all official. Don't get me wrong, I carried a bit of doubt playing for the first night, but I think this really takes the cake on how obvious it was. No way does a bunch of pictures disappear in a game for no reason. It's not even present in all in the other games, so why here? It's most likely that I'm playing a modded version of FNAF 4. It's the only rational explanation I can come up with for why this is all happening in-game. It did get me thinking though. If this was some sort of mod of the game, then what else had changed? From here on out, I'll do my best to look for any sort of changes as the nights continue. I cannot guarantee that I'll find all of them, other than those pictures disappearing. Nothing else seemed different, the gameplay is still the same. I ended up beating Night 2, and after playing the minigames, it was time for Night 3. As I began Night 3, the first thing I did was look all over my room for anything that changed. I found about 2 changes in total. First off, the clothes that were hanging in the closet, they had disappeared from this night. Second, my right drawers. The handles on them were also gone as well. I'm starting to notice a pattern going on here. Every time I progress through the night, more stuff in my room starts to disappear. I can't lie, this was really getting to me now. Why was this happening? What was the purpose for this to happen? Whatever the case, nothing else seemed to change, not even when I looked at my bed. It's the same Freddy plush with those small Freddy animatronics trying to kill me. The difficulty did increase, which did let me to get a few more kills. A lot of them were from Foxy. But other than that, I finally beat the night, and now came the 4th night. Night 4. It was becoming more difficult to fend the animatronics off as the night continued. In fact, the nights were pretty much at their highest difficulty, and this was just the 4th night. I thought this was going to be impossible to beat because of the strict timing of the animatronics. As for the changes, I looked down the right side hallway, and now the golden framed portrait on the wall by the table was no longer there. Even the ceiling lights were not there anymore. I still don't get it. Why is shit disappearing throughout the night? First the picture frames and then... wait, picture frames. The left hallway. It's the only other place with picture frames that hadn't gone away yet. I walked away from the door and sprinted to the other one. When I turned on my flashlight, just as I expected, no ceiling lights, and the walls no longer had picture frames hanging on the walls anymore. and now the clock wasn't present. How was that possible? I heard it chiming 11 times when the game started. If I can hear the grandfather clock chiming, and it's no longer at the end of the hallway, then where the fuck is it? This is becoming more uneasy for me because I'm starting to think of the random disappearance might be a warning that something bad's going to happen. If that isn't the case, then I ask again, why? There's got to be something for me at the end of the 5th night. None of this shit makes sense, and I'm hoping to explain the random vanishings I've seen. So I try my best to beat the night with this being my main motivation. About over 20 attempts later, I eventually beat the 4th night. Yeah, it wasn't easy to say the least. But now, I am ready for night 5, and to take on anything that might be waiting for me. As night 5 began, I immediately ran to the right door to see if anything had changed. I turned on the light down the hall. Nothing changed. It was the same as night 4. Then I checked the left hallway. Also the same. Wait. Who the hell was that at the end of the hallway? I must have let the light on for too long because then it flickered off, and resulted in a jump scare. I was left confused. Who was that? It looked like the yellow bear plush that was present throughout the game, or the robotic version of it. Except here, it was like the other animatronics the past 4 nights. Whoever this was, I was gonna beat it, and hopefully finish the game as a whole. He was just as difficult as the others. Not only was his pattern and movements very different, but it was tedious to find him on some occasions. I may have spent over half an hour trying to beat him. I kept silent the whole time and eventually I figured out his pattern. Dozens of attempts later, I heard a relieving digital alarm clock buzzing in my ear. I had done it. I had beaten the game. Pixelated text came on the screen reading, 0 days left until your birthday. Once the text faded away, it showed the child crying on his hands and knees as he was surrounded by his brother and some other kids. They all wore masks of Bonnie, Chica, Freddy, and Foxy, the bigger brother. They watched as the younger brother sobbed his eyes out. Wow, your brother's kind of a baby, isn't he? I think it was the guy in the blue shirt wearing the Chica mask. It's hilarious, the brother responded. Why don't we help him get a closer look? He will love it. No, please, the younger brother pleaded, but to no avail. The elder brother didn't listen. Come on, guys, let's give this little man a lift. He wants to get up close and personal. Then, all 4 of the boys picked the child up and walked away from the exit. The kid shaked and flailed, but it wasn't doing him any good. He was crying even more. They were getting further from the exit. No, I don't want to go, the kid shrieked. You heard the little man. He wants to get even closer. I was then shown the stage with a dark yellow rabbit in the background, but notably, the big yellow animatronic bear towering over the boys. Its jaws were clamping up and down as it moved. The boys stopped right in front of it for a couple of seconds. I was a little nervous about where this was going. They were dangerously close to the bear animatronic. Hey guys, I think the little man said he wants to give Fredbear a big kiss. On 3. 1, 2. It then showed the child inside the mouth of the animatronic bear, still flailing around and sobbing like crazy. Throughout the minigames, he had feared these animatronics. Through it all, he had fended off the nightmarish versions of those animatronics, and now he was inside the mouth one, all while the boys were just laughing at his expense. All sound stopped and an 8-bit crunch was the only thing left. The boys stopped laughing and just stared at the aftermath. As for the younger brother, he stopped moving as well. His head was crushed by the animatronic, and around its lips were red like blood. And some of the pixelated substance fell off the animatronic's lips and onto the stage itself. I wasn't scared, nor was I petrified by this. I was just in disbelief. No surprise. FNAF isn't usually the type of horror game to explicitly show any gore, or even blood for that matter. And here I am, seeing it leaked out of the child's head, all over the animatronic's mouth. It just stayed like this for a few more seconds before slowly fading out, but it wasn't over. It then showed a black void with a gray shadow underneath the boy. Was the yellow bear plush, who was looking right at him. Behind the bear plush, there were other plushies from his bedroom. More text appeared.
Can you hear me? I don't know if you can hear me. I'm sorry.
Was this coming from his brother? The same guy who orchestrated his own brother's death? Or rather, accidentally killing him? The yellow bear said.
You're broken.
As he did, the headless Foxy plush faded away.
We are still your friends.
The Chica plushie disappears.
Do you still believe that?
The Bonnie plushie fades away.
I'm still here.
Freddy plushie disappears. Now it was just the kid and the yellow bear plush in the void.
I will put you back together again.
Finally, the last plushie, his only friend, disappears into the void. And now he was all alone. He looked down onto the floor, and he just sat there crying. And just sat there crying. He kept doing so until he slowly faded away. You can make out the sound of a hospital flatline. I was honestly really depressed by this. I just watched a kid die in front of my eyes. And even though he was just a video game character, you felt pity for what he went through. I had beaten the game, but at what cost? After the cutscene went to black, I was then brought back into the main menu. Before I can even think of anything else, I noticed something different about the menu. There wasn't any sort of changes to the backgrounds, but rather another option. Mode. What the hell is this? I thought it was done. I could barely make out what it read, or at least what the word was. It was backwards and upside down. And some of the letters, from careful examination, it looked like the word was supposed to be nightmare. It was all I could make of it. But what is this mode, or rather, what's in it? I clicked it out of curiosity, and it loaded up an extra night for me to play. I expected the corner text to read, Night 6, but instead of that, it said, Be prepared. This wasn't programmed in very well because it kept flashing between that and another text, Be repaired. For those of you who might be confused, Night 6 takes the role of Nightmare mode in this mod because it included the Night 6 minigame that you're required to beat first in the normal game, alongside Night 5's minigame. The night started off way different than all the other nights. There was still the grandfather clock chiming about 11 times per usual, but there was no other sound apart from my footsteps, the flashlight clicking, and the doors opening. No crickets, no cars passing, no radio sounds, not even the sound of a nearby dog barking. What took its place was the faint sound of crackling fire. It didn't sound like somebody was camping. It sounded like it was a large one, surrounding the whole bedroom. Yet I couldn't see it out the window. What made the atmosphere worse was that you could make out the sound of people, actual people. They're screaming for help, to be let out, crying for their loved ones. It was really fucking gut-wrenching, even for a horror game. The only reason why I hadn't turned off the volume was because I was in the middle of the game, and I needed to listen for heavy footsteps. I assumed it was going to be the giant yellow bear again, but that loud, fast sprinting that was heard for less than a second was telling me otherwise. It did let out constant laughter which sounded like it. But it sounded more slow and deep. Meaning this couldn't actually be him. My flashlight could barely catch up with its footsteps. It shifted to one hallway and then to the other. I didn't know who it was, but I didn't bother to look. Every time I went to one of the doors, I would shut it immediately, without looking. And I didn't want to see that animatronic bear again. I figured with how fast this thing was, I was surely not going to win. However, I was 2 hours into the night and I hadn't died yet. Though I wish I did so I could stop hearing the unbearable screaming and crackling fire. I was halfway into the night, and I was at the left door, getting ready to shut it in its face. But I pressed and held down the control by accident. Turning on my flashlight, it wasn't that bulky animatronic bear from Night 5. It wasn't even an animatronic at all. There was an abnormally tall, horned demon-like silhouette standing in the middle of the hallway. The entire body was skinny and lengthy from the neck down. The thing was so tall, it couldn't fit inside the hallways, having to press its head against the ceiling at a nearby perfect 90-degree angle. And although it didn't appear to have any eyes, it's like the beast was staring right into my soul. I fucking froze for a second. Still holding down on control, I was left in shock as I watched my flashlight flickered off. I prepared for an incoming jump scare, but nothing happened. Right after it went dark, it just flickered back on to show now the empty hallway. "What the fuck is that?" I shouted. This entity clearly didn't belong in a game like FNAF. It looked like it was indeed in the game, but at the same time, it didn't. I just sat there alone in my thoughts for a couple of seconds, just trying to process what had happened. I hadn't died from shining the light at it for too long. Why didn't it kill me? Was this thing fucking with me? I quickly sat upright and started frantically rushing over to the other door. But it ran back to where I was again. I kid you now, I was fucking panicking. And the constant laughing didn't help me stay calm. The fire was slowly growing louder, and so was the screaming. It was to the point where I couldn't hear the footsteps. By the time I reached 5 a.m., it had gotten so loud that I had to turn down the volume. I couldn't take it anymore. It didn't help as it was starting to get louder every second. I was praying for the clock to hit 6 a.m. I could feel my entire body trembling. I rushed back and forth between doors, closing it off every time. The unbearable torture that was the fire and screaming. All while that beast kept fucking laughing. That's when all of the sounds, all of those damn ear-piercing sounds, had quietly faded out. I had looked at the clock in the top right corner. It read 6 a.m. I did it. I won. I had beaten the night. I had now beaten the entire game. I stopped myself and thought for a second. If I had beaten the night, then why am I still in the room? It's 6 a.m. now. It should be over. I was still able to move around in the room, but nothing happened. There's no digital clock alarm. Still able to move, I decided to check everywhere to see if it was still here or not. I checked the bed behind me. Nothing. I looked in the closet. Nothing. I checked both hallways, but again, nothing. Where did the thing go? Suddenly, I heard the grandfather clock playing again. And now with the sounds gone, I could hear it better. By the time the sixth and final chime rang, I was already looking down one of the hallways, still not seeing where that thing went. What was going on? I decided to run back to the bed area, but right as I returned, both of my ears were blasted by the sound of my computer screeching. I fucking jumped, letting out a startled scream. My flashlight was going haywire, flickering like crazy. I could make out something standing right in front of me. That same tall, demon-like figure, now in the middle of my room, towering me. It started laughing again. And as it did, its entire body shook, like it was freezing, its head twitching violently the most. I no longer had the option to click on either the left or right door. The only thing I could do now was, wait, the bed. I can just have my back turned and not have to look at that thing. I looked towards my bed and turned on my flashlight, and there it was again, popping out from my bed frame. It too shook and twitched violently. My light flickering was getting worse as it stood there and shook. My brain was throbbing like crazy from the computer screeching, and that god-awful laughing was starting to get to my head. I couldn't do anything else in-game. I watched hopelessly as the flickering of my light got worse, and then finally flickered off. An image of the face popped up on my screen. The thing had no eyes. It smiled widely from cheek to cheek, and the audio playing on repeat was that of a low, distorted wail of a siren. I've had enough of playing this game. I moved my mouse over to Task Manager, clicked on FIN4F application, and clicked End Task. It all went quiet. Now, I just sat there alone with my thoughts. I didn't know what to say other than, Jesus Christ. Whoever made this did a good job on scaring the shit out of me. That face was going to be stuck in my mind for a while. Still had tons of questions about this game, but I only had very little answers to them. Well, where do I even begin? First off, the kid in the minigames in between nights. These were all about him. About how he lived a miserable life being bullied by his older brother, and by everybody else in the neighborhood. He would have constant nightmares of what he feared the most, those dancing and singing animatronics. Second, the random stuff in the house was just disappearing throughout most of the nights. It was the kid losing his memory after he was bitten down by the main yellow animatronic, his worst nightmare. Speaking of nightmares, third, the nightmare mode, with the inclusion of the sounds of burning and screaming, was a representation of hell, this kid's personal hell. And as for that tall, horned figure, it was a stand-in of Satan, and the reason he didn't kill him was because he was psychologically torturing him for fun. I know that sounds really cheesy, but this is really all I got from this entire modded game. I didn't want to play it again just to find the rest that went unnoticed. Not like I could anyway. Every time I try opening the application, it just shows that same creepy smiling image. I want to figure out if there was more to this or not, but I pretty much can't show unless I wanted to delete the app and replay the whole game. You know what? Forget it. I'm just gonna let this all go. Never touch it again, and call it a night. I'm putting too much strain on my brain just thinking about it. Okay, so updating this document, I forgot to turn off my PC last night since I was exhausted from the whole ordeal. When I looked through my PC, I hadn't noticed that my WordPad was open. I opened it and read it. This is what it said. Okay, that was actually not too bad. At least in the second half. FIN4F follows the creepy mod/fan game trope. Think of like JVK, which I'm guessing the story was heavily inspired by. It also seems to take some inspiration from the Stingray virus and ransomware subgenre as well, which I thought FIN4F was going to be a computer virus creepypasta like the SpongeBob ransomware story. But nope, it went into a completely different direction. Now, I do have some issues with the story, mainly being that the first half was pretty slow, mainly with the unnecessary explanation of the general gameplay and mechanics of FNAF 4. I get that the main character never played the game, but still, to the many who had, it kinda feels a bit like filler. It should be trimmed out, especially when it came to explaining the minigames. Another is that the MC does act a little bit over dramatic, or at least dramatic over the wrong thing. Out of all things to make them question and come to the realization that this is a mod, is pictures disappearing. They act all shocked, saying that the other games would never, but Scott would 100% do something like that. It already happened before in FNAF 2, I mean, hello Paper Plate Boy. The MC should have started questioning with the whole, Shadow Satan Man thing or the, plush trap thing happening. Also, they act all surprised as they 100% believe that they were just playing the normal version of the game. even though the TXT doc they read stated that the game they downloaded was modified in some way. And the last bad thing I have to say is just more of a personal bias and nitpick for me, is the MC downplaying the intensity of the FNAF franchise as a whole, saying that there was never blood or gore in the series, even though the game that came out before had William being crushed with blood spraying into a pool, not to mention, his whole rotting flesh-wrapped skeleton in the spring Bonnie suit. You're just gonna forget about that? They even go so far to say that FNAF 4 is not even a horror game, I think. I don't know, the first paragraph of the story was worded kinda weirdly. But I can forgive all that, as the final part was worth it. Nightmare mode, or hell, is where the true horror of the story starts, with everything before slowly building up to it. It's super eerie with the sound of fire and screaming in the background, with the added of a threat that is moving really fast, frantically darting across the hull. I'm not gonna lie, I would be freaked the hell out. And I'm a hard guy to scare. Satan himself, while really not that scary in his normal form, to me at least, does amplify its creep factor with the close-up of its smile. It's so uncanny. That is creepy. I'm pretty sure it's gonna end up being one of the viewer's sleep paralysis demon. But before I can give the final verdict, I first must explain the changes I made to my score system. I changed it from the usual 5 out of 5 to a 7 out of 7, and it goes like this. 1 means it's terrible. 2 means it's bad. 3, it's below average. 4, it is average. 5 is above average. 6 is great. And the Covenant 7 is amazing. Why did I change my score system? Well, I feel like the 5 out of 5 was way too limiting. So where would this story fall under? Well, I'm not gonna lie, I did have a hard time deciding between 5 or 6. Even though the story had a slow start, it also had a really great final. So at the end, it might be controversial, but I decided to go with a 6 out of 7, strictly because the final part carried it. So thanks, Satan, you did good. So that's it. That's the end of the video. Wish me horrible luck if I'm already not going through it right now, because this is the second time recording this after my first got corrupted. And I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.